always kind of have these conversations. So I thought it would be perfect opportunity to get you on to also discuss this anime that we both, along with some other people in our Discord channel, have been watching. It is Blue Period. So
Yes.
for those who are not familiar with Blue Period, this is going to contain spoilers because we're going all out. But I'm going to give a synopsis of what Blue Period is, and then I have some questions for us. So Blue Period is about the student named Yatsura Yaguchi, and he's like popular. He's like kind of like a delinquent, branded as a delinquent. He has the piercing, he has the light colored hair, he has the friends that would be labeled delinquents. And one day he sees a painting in school and he like absolutely is just like encaptured in it. And then he says like, let me try painting. I'm gonna try this painting. And he ends up joining the art club. He ends up deciding that like this is for him. He wants to go to art school. And the anime so far, because this anime was just only 12 episodes, it so far followed him from discovering art into being in the cram school for art, and then applying to and eventually being accepted to Tokyo University for art in their super selective art program. So I want to start off with asking, how did you hear about Blue Period first? Did you discover the anime? Had you known about it through the manga? Like, what was your introduction to Blue Period?
Yeah, for me, Blue Period was definitely one that I was aware of beforehand because of the manga. And I think it kind of just, like you said, just kind of the stars aligned in this way because last year I had just started collecting physical manga for the first time. And so of course I'm going to the stores, I'm in person shopping around. And so every time I would go to Barnes and Nobles or Books a Million or wherever, I always see those beautiful covers for Blue Period. And never really knew like too much what it was, but I just always envisioned, okay, those covers stick in your mind. And so some months went by, whatever, and then eventually the announcement came like, okay, hey, there's going to be a anime about this. And so that was kind of my journey into the series was just okay, I saw this thing and I had heard good things about it. And so I was like, okay, maybe I might start reading it, but then I heard, okay, anime is coming. I'll hold off and just wait for the anime. So yeah.
I, on the other hand, had no idea about Blue Period, didn't know Blue Period existed, didn't know it was coming to Netflix. And I think maybe the day that it came out on Netflix, I saw like some people tweeting about it, just that it was out, not necessarily like what it was. Like I had no idea what it was about.
Mhm.
And then, excuse me, I had a friend over, and me and my friend, we always do this thing. I have very few friends, and the ones that I do, they're conned into the anime life with me. So we will pick random anime and we'll just watch like an episode
Mhm.
together, and then we'll be like, all right, like if we're then by we go home and we each watch the anime.
Mhm.
So Blue Period was one. Saw the first episode. I was like, okay, like this cool. And then but that was my introduction to it. I hadn't read the manga before.
Mhm.
Now, obviously we love Blue Period, but to somebody
Mhm.
who, it is an anime that it's very different, and it's a slow burn in the beginning. What
Mhm.
do you think from your first, when you remember when you first saw it, that kind of intrigued you to want to watch more? And I do want to disclaimer, I guess, to the audience, because if you haven't seen it, maybe you wouldn't watch it, but some people like spoilers. So Netflix was releasing each episode week by week, so it wasn't all the episodes weren't available.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm I'm trying to remember because even with me kind of going back and rewatching those first couple episodes over the course of today or whatever, um, honestly, I think just the concept itself was enough to intrigue me and to make me like, okay, I want to at least see where this is going to go, just because, at least for me, this is something that's a little bit different than a lot of stuff that is out there. It's like, okay, it is a manga or a series following somebody's journey into art. And so, between, like I said, just the premise itself and just the, I felt like they at least did good enough with that first episode to where it's like, okay, this is intriguing. I like how, him getting interested in or seeing that big painting, be like, huh, okay, now let me try this. That honestly was enough for me to at least give it another episode or two. Um, before kind of like, okay, I like this or don't like it. So yeah.
I think for me with Blue Period, I was intrigued because it's this like stereotypical delinquent type that you wouldn't think of would be interested in art. And then it's kind of like, whoa, like, is he going to take this seriously? Like, people kind of not believing. So I think that to me was something that genuinely interested me. I'm also a very slice of life, coming of age kind of story person. So I appreciate a slower anime, but I
Mhm.
think initially that's definitely what caught my attention is like he just doesn't look like an art student. So you're like, and
Yeah.
that obviously ends up being like a main focal point in the series is like his view of himself versus art. But it's no, no denying that he's actually talented. So
Mhm.
with, the story as it progresses, there is obviously it's about art, but it's also I think in general just about life and like creating. How did you feel with the anime? Because this anime is very like introspective. Like a lot of the dialogue is really Yaguchi talking to himself and him like dealing with his own biases and confronting his own judgments. How did you feel about that in this anime? Mostly because we don't really see that happen a lot in anime, unless it's like a fight scene and Deku's
Mhm.
analyzing his brain what he got to do. But other than that, most anime isn't as introspective as this anime is.
Yeah, I guess the short version is I loved it. Just because like you said, like we don't really get series that tackle those type of topics and themes in this way. Like you said, it's usually through, okay, hey, I'll prove myself through my fists or whatever. But Yaguchi being like, no, I'm gonna prove myself through my art. And one of the points that kind of stick out in my mind, I kind of looked at again earlier. There was a moment where basically one of his classmates kind of said that more or less he didn't really belong there. And so, of course, him taking that frustration and putting those emotions into his art, and that was the episode where he did the like the orange sun painting, and it just like when you look at that image, it just like it hits you. Like if this was a battle show, that would have been somebody getting like a uppercut. And it's like when you see that moment of just him pouring his soul and be like, no, basically, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And then you see what the result of those emotions were. I feel like it just speaks so much to all of us, just, whether you are an artist, you're a content creator, just anybody in life to where, I'm pretty sure like everybody at some point or another has probably had somebody doubt you or be like, hey, you don't belong in this space, you don't belong in this field or whatever. And then, you kind of be like, no, I do belong and I'm gonna show you, and it is whether, oh, hey, you dropped a really dope video. If you're a singer, you dropped a really dope song, whatever your creation is. And just the way that that is conveyed continuously throughout the show, both in the arts as well as just through the dialogue that the characters have between each other. It is truly something awesome, something special that just like really connects with me and with a lot of people. And it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, you know, when the season was kind of wrapping up and stuff, it was just kind of just like, okay, hey, y'all need to watch this. Like, especially, like us kind of sharing it within like even like our little circle, be like, hey, content creators, hey, y'all watch Blue Period because it will speak to your soul, because yeah, it just really hits.
We were pushing that agenda very hard. Me and you in that
Yes,
Discord, we like everybody get on there.
yes.
I completely agree. That moment made me cry. I mean, you saw I already cried like 3 times this recording. I cry all the time. I'm such a crybaby, but I definitely felt, and when he was like crying, painting that, I was like, I feel it. And I think too, for me specifically, I love all the introspective moments because I love how like Yaguchi would think something and immediately realize that he was wrong, and then he would kind of like backtrack. Like I think specifically his relationship with his friend Ryuji Yuka, and with that person, they were just like they were angry at them for not fitting in. I'm just gonna
Hmm.
use they them pronouns for
Yeah.
Yuka, because we don't know what they identify as. And they were upset when Yuka wanted to present female, but then they also kind of were like being so close minded and we're like, why are you
Hmm.
doing this? And then Yaguchi was then realizing, like, okay, hold on. Like, I feel like I'm being like super judgmental. And I
Hmm.
love the ability that even when like he was being an asshole, he could like catch himself in the moment and be like,
Hmm.
hold on, I'm not looking at this right. And I think the one thing that I really appreciated about this is that every character that he interacted with had a part of himself or made him see a part that was just like, again, like that he was like lacking. Because who you're talking about, I forget his name, the one who is the he's the art student that said like, oh, you don't belong here.
Yeah.
He was let me just go make sure, yes, um Yodosuke. He
Mm.
really he was like the manifestation of all of Yaguchi's doubt. Like he
Yeah.
literally was like, every time he would see him, he'd feel upset. He's like doing this competition in his head with him the whole
Hmm.
time. Yarasuka's like, Yarasuke is like thinking to himself like, damn, I hate you because you're so talented and you don't have to work as hard as I'm working.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
so beautiful how they have those characters like just kind of be like foils to each other and bring out really like really bring out all the flaws in Yaguchi, and then have Yaguchi work them out in his head and be like, damn, that's what I'm lacking. Like a lot of shows don't do that, or stories in general.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the biggest examples of that was once again with Yuka when it was that moment when Yuka reached out to Yaguchi while during the exams, and basically it was a late night phone call from a friend, and Yuka was basically like, "Hey, what you doing? Can we meet up? Need to talk?" And when Yaguchi was kind of like, "Nah, I got school in the morning," and that moment when Yuka basically started this speech that I really loved of just like, "Yeah, that is you. That is what you would say." And Yaguchi's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And then we just kind of get like that awesome comparison where Yuka's basically like, if you see somebody drowning, you would throw them a lifesaver, but you wouldn't jump in the water yourself. Or the other one I loved as well was, if you see somebody crying naked on the street, you would give them clothes and ask them if they're okay, but you wouldn't get naked yourself and sit with them. And basically just kind of just like, hey, kind of like what you said a little bit, just like, hey, kind of like being closed minded in a sense, and just like not putting yourself in that person's shoes to get their perspective, like, okay, why are they crying, why are they sad, or whatever. And I just love that moment because it really, between that and then when they actually got together and they ended up doing the naked self portraits and stuff, where it's like, hey, fully exposed, paint yourself. And that whole little moment together just really, I think, just to find this whole theme of like, okay, hey, being, like I said, being introspective, looking within oneself, and just kind of like question, like, okay, who am I? What am I doing? What do I want to do? And finding your place and stuff. So, but yeah, I just loved that whole little moment and relationship, and how that kind of just unfolded and stuff towards the end.
Absolutely. I agree, especially that scene when they are at that like rental place. And I think too like Yuka's role was so important because I think in the beginning Yaguchi is like, okay, like you were my childhood friend. Now,
Hmm.
like, do you want to be a woman? Do you want to be a man? Are you cross dressing? And instead of trying to understand, like
Hmm.
Yaguchi's like when in the beginning, do you remember like when Yuka went on the date and then they were crying because the date was like, oh, like are you a man or whatever? And then Yaguchi was like, oh, then why don't you just act like a man? Like, like that
Yeah.
was instead of being like, hey, what how are you feeling? What are you, like why this transition or why this change? Yuka was
Hmm.
just like, well, you out here cross dressing. Not Yuka. Yuguchi was like, well, you out here cross dressing. Like, what do you expect? And then having
Hmm.
those mental like thoughts. And then towards the end of the series, realizing that although he's not in that specific transition mentally or going through that with like gender identity and things like that, he too doesn't know. And he at the end is like, I admire Yuka because Yuka knows what they want. Yuka
Hmm.
is in who they are themselves and they aren't afraid to be that. And I
Hmm.
love that. I think that was such an important thing to show too, because in his, I think art really helped him with that, with he always looked at himself and only himself, and he thought that his thoughts were right and everything was true. And then when I think his art starts making him question his thoughts because he's thinking that it's not good and people are like, this is actually really good, and then he's also thinking some things are good and people are like, what the hell is this? Like
Yeah.
the way that art is, like, it's about art. Like I tell people, I'm like, it's about art but it's not about art at the same time.
Yes, yes. So another one that I kind of think about a lot also happened during the exam. And I, the whole that whole exam thing, it was just so much happened because like between him overworking himself and being stressed and getting sick, but not wanting to tell people because he didn't want to disappoint and all that stuff, whatever. But the the exam portion where they had to do these self portraits looking in the mirror. I love that just because I feel like that not only just for Yaguchi, but I feel like for even like the viewers, just kind of being like, hey, everything isn't going to be perfect. Sometimes we have to be able to adapt to what's going on because he was kind of struggling trying to figure out how to do the self portrait and all this stuff. And just by accident, that person that was in front, like at the thing in front of him, whatever, was trying to line up their art. They backed up. His mirror broke, fell over and broke. And now he's like, oh my God, am I going to fail? And then he actually looks at all the shattered pieces of the mirror and he's seeing fragments, literally fragments of him, of his reflection, and that's what was his inspiration for the awesome piece that he ended up creating. And so I just really love that moment just because it's like, hey, you got to be able to sometimes adapt. Like life is not about, hey, there is no straight road or no straight path in life. Sometimes unexpected things are going to happen and you have to be able to adapt and make the best out of it. And that was just something I just like super loved about that whole thing. And honestly, it kind of makes me think like, if that didn't happen, he might not have finished or passed, if that moment didn't happen. So,
Right, he wasn't, because that was the piece that, like, put his name on the map for
mhm,
that first test. I also like that moment, and I think it's so it's also good too, like how in the show, like obviously we only see Yaguchi, the one freaking out, and he's having all the thoughts. But then he, like when it's panning away and looking, he looks the same as everyone else. But inside is like all this turmoil and all this freaking out. And it's like that's really like a reflection of life where sometimes like you going crazy and you're like, everybody else looks so calm. And you'll know the other person next to you probably looking at you like, damn, he looks so calm.
yeah.
I think you made me think of like another I guess moment or realization that I really appreciate from the series, like as a takeaway, is like that sometimes you don't, like, there's gonna be people who come on the scene and just have that natural talent, and it doesn't matter that they haven't been doing this for X amount of years. They may have just picked it up. Like sometimes there's that natural talent, and I think sometimes This is why I feel like people shouldn't be afraid to try new lanes or try new hobbies or try new crafts, because it's like Yaguchi is talented. Like he's not, but he put in a lot of work once he kind of, excuse me, once he discovered like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Like he figured it out and he made it work for himself. But then you see like the girl who her sister was like talented and she's super
Yep.
talented, like she didn't make it in. And
Yep.
it's one of those things where it's like, in anything, it's not just, oh, you've been doing this for X amount of years. Like sometimes there's people who've been doing it way less and they have that spark and they have that drive. And I think it's a good testament to anybody. Like sometimes I feel like if you feel like you have an inclination for something, like try it. Like you never know. Like you never was in choir or nothing, but secretly you got a good voice.
Yep.
You don't know what could happen. I love that kind of takeaway from the series too, because I just feel like there's so many ways to do something. And I think that was the importance of like the cram school and all the
Mhm.
different characters, because everybody had a different style and everybody was talented, but some people just kind of did it better than others.
Yep. Yep. I definitely agree with yeah, everything you just said there. And one thing I like about with the season, and I like that it covered pretty much like him starting it, and then him reaching that initial goal of, okay, now getting into college. Because honestly, going into it, aside from knowing, okay, it's about art or whatever, I'm very excited just knowing like, oh hey, okay, now we're gonna get to follow his journey to the next step. Cause that was kind of like a perfect way to kind of end the season of just like, hey, you went through all this crazy stuff. We see his journey to get to this point, but now it's also kind of like, okay, now it truly begins. And so it just kind of just like very awesome, just knowing, okay, hey, we supposed to kick it up a notch. And now I'm just like, man, what type of dope, amazing art are we about to see? Cause we were already seeing some good stuff, but now we dealing with some adult stuff, because now it's not just potentially people his age, because college you have people of all age ranges, whatever. So I am just very excited to see that next step. But I do feel like in these 12 episodes or however long the season was, that they just did such a good job of just kind of like encapsulating that journey from, hey, kind of like discovering, figuring out, and then that kind of, like you said, just for all the different characters, as far as like, okay, hey, we had this new guy came on the scene, boom, he got in. Oh, we had this person that, like you said, she was the younger sister of a prodigy, and everybody's like, oh, she's gonna get in easy. She didn't get in. And so I just love how I just kind of just played on those expectations of like, hey, you think you know what's going on, up curveball, 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 you know. So yeah, I really just this series just so
So
freaking good.
good.
Yeah.
um I don't know if Yaguchi was your favorite character, but if he was, aside from him, who would you say is one of your favorite characters in the show?
For sure, both of the teachers, because but both of them were so awesome and supportive
Hmm.
in their own ways, and I just really loved both of them, as well as who was the one, Maury.
The Mori senpai.
Yes, just because she was kind of the reason why he had that initial spark, because he saw that painting of hers. And I kind of love how her and her art kind of bookmarks the season, to where that was the first thing he saw that kind of got his interest. And then I love how they kept on missing each other. They never really saw each other again, at least like in like to look at each other's art together. And so I kind of love how at the end he got caught out of the room right before she came in. And so seeing Maury and the one teacher, Masako, the older teacher, them admiring his art just made me love her character even more because it's like, okay, hey, she sees little Yaguchi's growing up, and now he's coming on to the next stage. Um, yeah, Maury definitely the main one, but I definitely do got to give a shout out to his little close group of friends that he had at the beginning because like you said, it's okay, he kind of had this delinquent persona, but everybody kind of knew, okay, you really don't like smoking, you really don't like going out partying and stuff, whatever, but you're just doing it to hang out with your friends. But I do like how over the season those characters kind of see their friend going on this journey and truly becoming who he wants to be, and them being there for him, like, yo, your art is really dope, dude. And like that first moment where he's kind of blushing and they're like, hey, you drew that? That was really cool. So yeah, so his friends and oh, and of course his mom,
Mom was coming
because
through.
just like her going from the initial being like, hey, we can't afford this, to her coming in his room while he sleep those couple times and being like, and seeing all the art all over the place, and she's like looking like, okay, this is really good, and you're actually really serious about this, to her being like, hey, is there anything you need? What can I do to support you? And then like that it kind of embrace at the end to where she was there to celebrate with him, like, hey, you did it, you made it. So for sure, got to give shout out to Yaguchi's mom, just kind of taking notice of her son, and instead of like the unfortunate situation that Yuka's in with their parents, where their parents aren't understanding.
Terrible.
But shout out to
Grandma.
grandma, because I loved her grandma, or
Me
their
too.
grandma, because she just being there, just knocking on the door.
She like, this
Are,
my
are
house.
you
I'm
are
gonna
you
save your
okay?
item.
Are you okay? Here's your art supplies. But yeah, so otherwise I'm gonna keep on rambling off all the whole cast of characters.
They're all, hold on, I'm just changing
Yeah.
locations. I completely the same. I was gonna say his mom too. The one line when he's gonna take the test and he's sick, and I think she says, like, I wish I could do this for you, or like, I wish I could be sick instead of you. Like,
Yes.
when she said that, I was like, my heart, mom, you're so amazing. um
Yes.
I was also thinking his friend, specifically the one that was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a baker and I'm gonna go to culinary school,"
Yes.
and like him saying like that he was inspired by Yaguchi, and like he's like, "I saw how much and how passionate like you were with the art thing, like that made me feel like I could also do the same." Like I thought that was just like so special, and I think oftentimes media in general really doesn't show like the influence male relationships can have on each other, and I
Yeah.
thought that was like chef's kiss. Aside
Yes.
from them, my favorite character is definitely going to be, I forgot his name already, I'm so sorry. Asada, hold on, I'm pulling it up.
Mhm.
What's his name? The one that said that he wasn't good enough.
Oh,
Yorasuke.
yeah. Yeah.
Like he was such a pain in the ass, and like he really irritated me, but I could identify like with his pain. Like he's been this genius this whole time, and then out of nowhere this new person comes to prep school. They
Hmm.
it to you it seems like a joke because you've never seen them before. They're just out here, and then they're out here like having the audacity to be good too. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I haven't read the manga yet. Obviously I know the
Hmm.
story continues, but I think like, then you see them at the testing center and they're like bonding, and they're, even though like Yaguchi is so nervous around him, like he also is very honest with him. And I think like
Yeah.
Yasuke is like intimidated, and I feel like he's kind of like the loner kind, but I really
Hmm.
think like they're a good fit for each other, and I'm like hoping moving forward, if they animate a second season, like we learn more about him, because he's annoying and he's a brat, but I think he's like good underneath it all.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Because yeah, they bounce off of each other really well. Because I can't remember the specific line, but basically it was along the lines of where Yaguchi was basically saying like, oh, you're so, talking about like how good Yonosuke is, I'm trying to remember. Shoot, I really wish I could remember specifically what he said, but basically it was just something along the lines of just like actually like, you know, yes, I'm good, but you know, he's putting in work and different stuff like that. Right? It's not just yes, yes, of course, yes, my stuff is good, but there's more to it than than that. But yeah, yeah, I am also very interested to see how their relationship and stuff kind of goes as they go on to this next stage.
Yes. So as we're wrapping up, do you have, well, you're going to have to pick just one standout moment that was like your favorite in the entire all 12 episodes.
Hmm. Honestly, I think I'm gonna have to just go back to that sun painting. Because like I said, just because I feel like that was like one of like the one of like the first times where it like really hit of like, okay, hey, he is really pouring his emotions into what he is doing. And this is the end result to where it's like when they first cut to that, like I said earlier, when they first cut to that image of the painting, and it's just like a pow. And it's like, whoa, okay. So yeah, that I think that would definitely be my moment because I went back because I specifically went back to rewatch that moment before we recorded, and I didn't realize how early that was. That was like episode 4. In my mind, I'm thinking that's like later in the season or whatever, but like no, that's pretty early on. So, but yeah, that's my moment. What about you?
That again, tears because he did it crying, and that was like too. Because you remember they did like that open house, and they met Yasuke's mom, and the
Yeah.
Yasuke's mom's like, "Oh, I'm glad we have for like you have friends," and really like it's like your son hates me. Um, but for me, just the image of when they were like, "Oh, when the teacher said only those who pass the first exam, like you're coming back to cram school, and then it's like the guy, the girl, and then it's Yaguchi at the end, and that's how the episode ends. I literally
Yes.
like screamed because I was like, with this anime too, like it could go any way, like because literally it is his journey, so it would make sense if he didn't pass the exam. You know what I mean? Like that's such a
Yeah.
probable thing, and sometimes in stories like this it doesn't go right the first way because you have to like learn a lesson. So I literally was like, is he gonna pass, is he not gonna pass? So then when they like he comes into the door and she's like saying their names, like the three students who passed or blah 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 blah. Yuguchi, I was like, yes, like just and then like how like he opens the door and his face is so excited. I thought that was just like it was just so amazing because I feel like that first test is like I to me I feel like it was more important. One, the struggles that you mentioned earlier, but two, like you that's the only chance you get, and like you don't even make it to you only have that one chance to prove yourself halfway.
Hmm.
So if you fuck up the first part, too bad, you're done. So I felt like that
Yeah.
was just such an important test that it just really like when they show his face, I was like, yes, I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
I felt like it
Yes.
was my child. I was like, "You go, you Gucci."
Yes, because that whole moment with that, as well as a little bit before when they were kind of all waiting to go look at the giant board of who passed, who failed, and you just seeing just the heartbreak and celebration all over the place of everybody being like, "Yes," or like in the sense of what's the one girl, Kawana, being like, "Yo, I don't see my number up there, whatever." But then that turnaround where she's like, "I don't see my number," but then Yaguchi's like double
Well, that's a
checking.
different. That's the end. That's the
Oh,
that's the end one. What
oh,
you're talking about?
you're right. You're
Hmm.
right. You're right. You're
But that
right.
part
You're
too
right.
was like,
Yeah.
cause she like dropped to the floor, and then she's like, "Never mind. I'm gonna forget about this. I'm done. Moving on." And then
Yes,
I got a
yes,
concert to go to.
yes. But yeah, yeah. My bad. I did get those two
And no, it's
moments mixed
okay.
up. But yeah, but both of those moments just really encapsulates just that feeling of both victory and defeat. Because I know all of us has probably been on both sides of the coin at some point of our life, and we can like relate with all the characters, whether they were like, man, I didn't get it, I didn't pass, or like I passed. So yeah, just two beautiful moments to yeah to really celebrate.
And just to pull over quick, isn't it like mad fucked up? You gotta find out in front of everybody with a giant, like them Japanese systems with the school be like, let's display your test. Like, damn, can I
Yes.
grieve in private? Yeah, you gotta act their straight face,
Like send me an email or something.
like my
It's
whole
like
future just flashed before my eyes, and I gotta stand here with other people who are screaming and crying over excitement.
yes, yes,
Listen, it's crazy, but I want to thank you for coming on, especially for this special part, because me and you
yes,
clearly are Blue Period hive. We're here. I
yes.
think everyone needs to get on the Blue Period agenda.